As Chris said, I'm Beth Pollock, and today I'm here to talk about how our documentation team at Citrix is learning to adopt and embrace content governance using acrolinks. So, in case you're not familiar with Citrix, Citrix provides networking, virtualization, and cloud computing technologies. We're celebrating our 30th anniversary this year, and our first product provided remote access computing. The remote computing of the late 80s and early 90s evolved into server application and desktop virtualization and cloud computing technologies. As Chris said, our headquarters is in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and we employ about 8,000 people around the world. We have R&D centers in the United States, the United Kingdom, India, China, Greece, and the Czech Republic. I'd like to give you a little bit more context around our team and how and why we use acrolinks. Our team delivers and manages docs.citrix.com, the home of Citrix product documentation. Lots of people still commonly refer to this as admin guides. And our content is business critical for tech support and our partners. We host admin-facing documentation for 15 products and all of the related components. We also support more than 50 content contributors who live around the world, and our authoring teams are usually co-located with engineering teams. For many years, our networking and virtualization product lines were separate divisions. The virtualization team had an editor till about 2010, and the networking team had a technical editor until about 2017. Neither editor was replaced. And when we did have editors, we tried many times to coordinate adoption of a standard style guide across all divisions. But because the content is hosted on the same website by the same company, it seemed important that we would speak with a single voice on that website. Most importantly, we wanted to foster a consistent experience for our customers. Unfortunately, we couldn't agree on a common style guide. The virtualization team had always used Microsoft, and the networking team preferred Chicago. The editors, when we had them, were supporting too many authors, and they couldn't cover everything, especially for teams that follow a waterfall approach to product development. And the turnaround times for different geos and time zones created numerous challenges and delays. With inadequate editing support, we tried to fill the gap. The managers provided what support they could, but the managers had less bandwidth than the editors did to cover everything. We tried peer reviews, but we got mixed results there. Some authors just skipped the peer reviews altogether, and other authors did peer reviews, but they took a very light touch because they were afraid of being seen by their peers as critical. And we also have a significant number of team members for whom English is a second language. Different dialects led to inconsistency and sometimes downright confusion for our readers. And many authors from other countries find it challenging to learn to write in US English, which is our corporate standard. Another dilemma the team faced was from stakeholders. I'm sure we've all faced stakeholders who enjoy writing and who have very strong opinions about the application of style and grammar. I see some heads nodding. Our team's no different. Many of the reviewers offered really strong input regarding writing style, word choice, and sometimes they even went off brand and used creative variations of our product names. Without an editor or more objective means of checking for content and brand governance, our team frequently lost these battles. In cases where authors struggled to write in US English, the managers had no choice but to step in, and their valuable time and brain power were spent on low-level copy edits rather than developmental or substantive edits where they could have really made a difference. The managers spent so much time copy editing that they neglected the developmental edits because they just didn't have enough time to do it all. The docs were inconsistent, Everyone was following their memory or their own interpretation of the style guide, and different teams of reviewers had their own expectations and wanted to dictate their own style. The docs were fraught with errors. We had lots of embarrassing typos and grammar errors getting published, including some misspelled product names and even the company names sometimes. With so much inconsistency, our localization team was just inundated with fuzzy matches. And because the authoring and product teams were left to their own devices, localization was often not even considered during content development. The inconsistency and errors were slowing down localization and limiting their ability to cover the documentation. Their turnaround times were a lot longer than we wanted them to be, and we weren't able to leverage machine translation as much as we wanted. For many years, localization has wanted to expand our coverage to more languages, but the state of the English source has been hampering our ability to do that. Of course, the worst part was that our customers were dissatisfied. We offer a feedback mechanism on our site which allows visitors to report errors. I mentioned embarrassing typos and grammar errors. Some of the reports we got from customers were absolutely scathing. It was obvious from their comments that we'd lost their trust because of sloppy errors. And if they couldn't trust us to spell our product name correctly or to use proper grammar and spelling, how could they trust our technical accuracy? The dissatisfaction was also coming through loud and clear in our annual customer satisfaction surveys. We run the survey for the site in November of every year, and many respondents commented about the simple errors and how poorly those reflected on our brand. We'd explored acrolinks as a solution for several years, even before we lost our editors. We got approval and we went live in late 2016. We use Acrolinks Cloud rather than on-prem because the hosted solution is best suited to our business requirements. So from there, it was all angels singing, right? In some ways. So we did have some immediate big wins. In one case, we had an author in another geo who struggled with US English. She had a very vocal and opinionated group of stakeholders who really tried to dictate the content. Her manager and her peers spent hours on copy edits, correcting grammar and spelling. Everybody was frustrated. The content required fast turnaround, and simple edits were taking 2 days or more because of time zone differences. The author would submit her work, the manager couldn't allow it to be released without a review, so he would review it during her overnight hours, he would send it back, the author would make the changes, and it would go on and on. It could take several days to get the finished product. The stakeholders were also frustrated. They just didn't understand why it took so long for what they saw as something very simple. Almost as soon as we'd rolled out Acrolinks, the manager came to me singing its praises. He said Acrolinks had pretty much eliminated his copy editing chores. The author was able to run her content through Acrolinks, use the immediate feedback to make necessary changes, and send good content to her manager for review. He and her peers were now able to do substantive edits. An added benefit was the author learned even more. Rather than just writing, she was also learning from the substantive edits, and she learned to evaluate the information herself and started asking better follow-up questions. She was an early superstar with Acrolinks. She used it consistently and she saw tangible score improvements, which motivated her even more. She took pride in submitting her work to her manager with confidence, and the stakeholders were happy with the improved turnaround times, so it was a big early win for us. Several managers reported improved turnaround times. Eliminating the work Acrolinks does helped them with a time-consuming task. And the managers reported a positive shift in the nature and the quality of their edits. Since they could now focus on substantive edits, the overall quality of the content, including the technical quality, was improving. And we noticed that the objectivity Acrolinks brings helped reduce iterations with our engineer and marketing contributors. Our team invites content contributions from engineers and marketing teams. The engineers in particular spent days working on their articles, getting the message just right, and making sure the content was well written. Before Acrolinks, it could take a couple of weeks of iterations with these contributors. They were understandably proud of their work, and they didn't want some editor messing it up. Discussions around editorial suggestions usually focused on the contributor's belief that the editor was subjective and requiring pedantic changes just because they could. Once we introduced Acrolinks, those discussions went away. The engineers understood and appreciated that the editorial changes were made at the suggestion of an automated tool. At that point, they saw the changes as objective, not subjective. And the conversation about sentence length and word choice became much easier. We cut down the iteration times from weeks to just a couple of days. And the engineers, who felt pressured to publish quickly, were much happier with the turnaround time. While we were enjoying the big wins, we still had a lot of work to do. In the wider team, there were issues with our authoring tool. Those were completely separate from Acrolinks, but because the authoring tool was so poorly suited to our team's work, Acrolinks adoption was not what we'd hoped for. For many authors, adding Acrolinks to a bad authoring tool experience was just another obstacle. It really hurt our adoption. Even making the Acrolinks plugin available in Word just added one more thing to authors who were already struggling. We initially rolled out with a large set of terms, including a large set of admitted terms. After I interviewed our localization team to find out what would make the best difference for them, I'd concluded that flagging multiple use terms as admitted would encourage authors to review word choice carefully. That was wrong. No matter how often it was explained and how often we had training, we still had team members who viewed those flags, and I should use present tense, we still have team members who view those flags as errors and they just immediately change them to the suggested term. Those team members thought they were stuck in an infinite loop, and it was wasting tremendous effort and causing frustration. It was a barrier to adoption. And the style guide itself caused quite a bit of controversy. Since we didn't have editors, everybody had a copy of the style guide and used it. What we didn't realize was that every person on the team, every person, had their own recollection of the guide and their own interpretation. Like Andre said yesterday, everyone thought they were the embodiment of the style guide. So when we started flagging issues that people were positive they were doing right, there was quite a bit of discussion and reference back to the guide. Unfortunately, a lot of people just wanted to know how to get a good score. So authors were spending time experimenting to see where they could get the biggest score gains, whether this type of flag or that type of flag had any score impact. And that's unfortunate because it meant authors were correcting just enough issues to get the minimum recommended score, which in our case is 80, but they were walking away and ignoring other glaring issues like spelling errors and typos, because in their minds they'd done everything they needed to do. The issues on the wider team led to unhappy users, frequent complaints, and low adoption rates. And many authors were just not using Acrolinks at all, and the customer complaints continued. So we had to do something to fix it. We partnered with Acrolinks to help us get more on track. There was a lot of interest from our authoring community to provide input about our style guide and to make better use of the tool. The management team nominated authors who were actively engaged in using Acrolinks and who had enthusiasm for evaluating and maintaining our style guide. We called these leading users the Acrolinks Masters. And the goal of our project with Acrolinks was to evaluate our configuration, including a terminology quality evaluation, and to do what we could to help our user community feel more successful. We knew Acrolinks would help us further improve content quality if the authors would make greater use of it. So with about 10 members of the Acrolinks Masters, we met weekly with the Acrolinks team to review our system configuration and to better learn the tool. We got retrained on terminology management and analytics. And our goal for Acrolinks Masters was to foster engagement and to build team ownership. We hoped that with our most enthusiastic and committed users on board, they'd help evangelize the rest of the team and lead everybody to higher utilization rates and improved content quality. When we sat down with Acrolinks to evaluate the environment, we had a laundry list of items to address. Terminology was the most problematic area. We had too many terms under management, and we needed to cut. The admitted terms were causing headaches, like I mentioned, and inefficiency, so we relabeled them. In fact, we relabeled all of the terminology flags, changing the defaults from admitted and deprecated to use with caution and do not use. And we updated checking profiles. And with the help of our Acrolinks Masters team, we identified false flags and we worked to address them. We updated the guidance and we looked at KPIs and reporting. And things got better. More of the authors started using Acrolinks, and our Acrolinks Masters were using it more than they did before the optimization effort. The overall content score improved, as did compliance with our brand governance related to product names. But looking at our dashboard, we could see the overall score was trending around our minimum. It was right around 80. But across the board, we had a stagnated style score of 60, and that had actually trended downward. So we drilled into the low style score, and sentence length was by far the biggest issue, as was a custom guideline we'd implemented to help with click-throughs in the text. But nobody was complaining about that false flag with the click-through guidance. So just to give you an idea of what that overall score was doing, and all of the category scores. So it seemed like a good time to regroup and just find out what the team was thinking. We could take action from there. So we surveyed our user community, managers and authors, and our response rate was 66%. The survey results were actually a lot better than I'd expected. I thought we'd have a significant number of non-users, but the folks who responded reported 100% that they use Acrolinks and that they all find it useful. The survey comments helped us drill down into user experience. Many of the frustrations were really just simple education or training issues that could be easily addressed. For example, the use with caution admitted terms were still really confusing. And we also identified some enhancement requests and some configuration issues. As soon as we possibly could, we had a meeting with the authors to report the results of the survey. And our goal was to inform and educate our users while letting them know that we understood the problems and we were taking action on them. We also revived our Acrolinks Masters group, which we had disbanded after the optimization project. We're looking to our Acrolinks Masters to provide peer coaching and insight from our various sites. We also want to improve communication across all the different sites. So our Acrolinks Masters meet monthly, and we review terminology and guideline changes. We talk about possible false flags and the best way to address them, and we generally look for ways to improve the content. And the Acrolinks team has been a huge help in this whole process. Because our leadership are really eager to see data that reflects improvement in customer satisfaction and greater localization coverage, we started a controlled experiment with 2 of our authors. 2 of our senior authors volunteered to help, And one of those authors is an Acrolinks devotee. She was a very early adopter, and before she came to Citrix, she worked with some very strong and effective editors. She's always been a huge supporter and a power user. Our other author was not such a fan. He'd inherited some legacy content that came to us as part of an acquisition, and fixing the errors and getting the content in compliance just looked like a Sisyphean task. So we chose the KPIs we wanted to measure, and we established pre- and post-effort measurement dates. We run the content analyzer weekly on those doc sets to check their interim progress, and the early returns have been very encouraging. The authors have been inspired to keep making improvements, and our former not a fan is now a huge evangelist. And even though we're not finished yet, and we don't have data, the experience has already been paying off great dividends. Our power user scorecard immediately revealed issues with false flags, and we were able to work with Acrolinks to get those addressed quickly. The one-on-one coaching with our other user provided him with training that helped improve his effectiveness. Now he has a much better understanding of our content and brand governance, and that's led to vastly improved scores. And his higher scores have motivated him to do more. We're looking forward to the KPI and the post-effort measurement in a few weeks. And we notified localization when we kicked this off too, and asked them for input on the KPIs that they thought would be most indicative that this was working. They've been following the progress, and even without having sent anything out, they're really eager to start translation. They really believe that the effort is going to make a significant difference. So lessons learned over the last couple or so years while we've been getting used to having brand and content governance using Acrolinks. If I had it to do over, I would definitely pare down the terminology to bare essentials only. At least to start, you can always add from there. I'd also not even go down the road with the admitted terms. I wouldn't even go there. It may work for other teams, but in our situation with an authoring team that was relearning to have governance, it was just too much governance too soon. Another adjustment I'd make would be to roll out to a small group of users at first and then gradually expand. We were so eager to get results that we just got a bit too aggressive with the rollout. And in hindsight, our early user acceptance testing was an indicator of issues we had to address later. We were also so eager to demonstrate results and to show that the investment had paid off that we lost touch with the whole aspect of user adoption. I'd make adoption a much higher priority if I had it to do over again, and I'd just wait for the results to follow along. And I also think that staying in touch with the user community is really critical. We're keeping our Acrolinks Masters group going, and we meet every month, and the agenda is driven by the team members. They suggest topics for the agenda, and they make the presentations. I also plan to continue surveying the wider user community just so we can stay in touch, and if there are any issues the Acrolinks Masters miss at their local sites, we can maybe pick up on those. And in the next year and a half, we do have some goals. We do want to drive greater utilization across our entire team. And we are looking to automate our content checks into our build process. Our executives have been asking for dashboards for quite some time, so we're looking to build those out. And because, as I mentioned, author outreach is really critical for us, we'll be continuing with that. And we want to expand. We've had some interest from marketing, and there is a marketing team that has its own area on our site. They've been working with contributors from all over Citrix, and they appreciate having Acrolinks to check for content and brand strategy alignment. So even though our adoption of content governance and brand strategy got off to a slow start. We're confident that with Acrolinks, to help us, we'll be fully embracing our content governance and brand strategy soon, and we'll be speaking in one clear voice. Thank you.